Welcome back to the PHENIX Investigations Podcast. We got one of our favorites back again, Joel Weis, Senior Investigator. What's up, Joel?
How we doing, everybody?
I couldn't be any better if I tried.
Well, I mean, Thanksgiving's next week, so we're all going to be hopefully fat and happy by next weekend.
I started about 51 weeks ago, getting fat and happy, but gobble gobble.
Same.
So obviously, Joel, you guys, asset search is one of the things that PHENIX is known for. So we talk about it a lot. Today, I really want to focus on one kind of subset of what you do is corporate asset search.
Perfect. And corporate asset investigations can go, so many different ways, and we get involved in a multitude of different times in those types of investigations. Most of the time, if you would think about an asset investigation, or where people mostly think of us coming in is at the end. Somebody screws somebody out of money, screws somebody out of promises, whatever, out of their contract. We come in and try to find where stuff had disappeared to. There's also, stuff or times we get involved right before that, kind of that pre-breakup. Are they planning to do it type of thing, or do they have the suspicion that something's going on? And then hopefully, people are actually doing their due diligence and bringing us in before they get in bed with somebody and having us look into their background. Are they lying, and those types of things. So there's a couple of different areas that we get involved in for sure.
Obviously, we talk about this concept of, prevention. You get involved in the prevention side and the after the disaster happens. Doing it early is always better. One of the things that always blows my mind when we talk is people sign really big business deals, whether it's a partnership, signing on with a new vendor, supplier, without looking under the hood. First, just hit on why do you think people are willing to sign such big life-altering deals without doing an investigation? And what would you tell them if you had the chance?
Yeah, I mean, there's really good salesmen out there. I mean, there are people who are just gifted and born to talk to other individuals, and they just seem like the most normal human being, the nicest, the most accommodating, whatever that the case may be. They just have the gift of gab, and can just talk their way into anything. And so when somebody's that good of a salesman, and they give you the right documents that make you feel all warm and happy, they don't give you any of those red flags up front until you're basically in the bed and it's too late.
That's really interesting. It just it goes back to this idea of, con men.
Yeah.
And it's not like this nefarious figure all the time. It's just a businessman in a quarter zip or a suit sometimes.
100%. Yeah. I mean, the best people out there who scam people out of money, who make bad business deals. I mean, yeah, they're just your average looking person. They don't dress really bad, but they don't also dress really well. Some of them do. I mean, you'll always have the ones who want to be flashy and are maxing out their credit cards, leasing crazy high-end vehicles to make you think that they've made a whole lot of money. But, the people who get away with it for a long time, they're not flashy. They're just the average person, the average businessman trying to help you make a buck when all they're going to do is actually take your money.
So, Joel, what does it look like if I'm someone in a world where everyone does exactly what they should, they think rationally, they protect their interests? If I am launching a new business with an acquaintance or an acquaintance of an acquaintance, everything looks really good, but this is a big deal. What should I do?
Yeah, so we get approached a lot to do kind of these big, in-depth background searches. And, I mean, you can go on the internet, pay $100 to have a search engine run a background for you. And some of those will give you some good information. A lot of those are just glorified Google, and they don't verify any of the information that they're actually giving you. It's just going off of what you're actually inputting. We do a lot of backgrounds that are, very surface level, gets a little in depth, but gives you just a good understanding. And then we do also some very in-depth background searches that we just dig through everything. And so we implore people to do this before. It's like, if you're going to get in bed, it doesn't matter if they've been your friend for 20 years, if they're an acquaintance, or you've never heard a bad thing about them. I mean, you need that check to make sure that what they're telling you is correct. All of their finances that they're giving you is correct. All of their business deals that they've done, are those correct? Just to put that stamp of approval on it.
That makes a lot of sense. So like there's a couple ways to go with it. You have kind of a lighter service and a more advanced service. If I call you and tell you I'm going to go into business with someone, we're like right at the point where we're, crossing T's and dotting I's, but I want to do due diligence here. How do you decide, or what questions do you ask me to decide how in depth that you should go?
Yeah, it's a lot of that starts with just questions about the person. How much do you know about them? Just kind of those general questions. If you're going to get to be a partner with somebody, that usually means you've spent some time with them, and you just have that kind of the BS back and forth, the everyday talk. So we get into those types of questions, and then it's do you see any red flags? Have there been any uneasy moments? Have there been something that you asked for that they should have had on hand that they had to go take 2, 3, 4 days to actually get together or put together? And you may not think about it right then, but it's like, when you're asked all these questions and you put all the weird situations together, it kind of adds up to that. Okay, I'm glad I'm doing this, and we're going to dig deep into those, getting into their finances, kind of getting into, are they telling the truth? Are they upkeeping on all of their bills? Do they owe people money? That's the one biggest thing. It's like, Brian's probably said it a couple of times on the podcast now, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Do they have any litigation against them that they've already done this in the past, and they're trying to get to that next step to take your money to get the monkey off of their back in litigation, to be right back in the same seat with you.
That is one thing that Brian has hit on, where people think this is not a bad person. I don't need to investigate them. But the rob Peter to pay Paul situation is sometimes, unfortunately, when people get into desperate situations, they do things that they would not have done.
Yeah, yeah, and we see it a lot too. I mean, we do have definitely the bad guys that is their job, is to go out and screw people out of money. We also do a lot of corporate investigations that, whether it's somebody who had a really good idea, made a business and built it, but there is some like very small teetering point that if everything goes correctly, everything runs smooth. If they book out too many jobs and don't have quite the labor force to back it up, or don't have the material right away, and so they rely on, okay, well, I'm going to book Scott for this next job. You're going to pay me $20,000, whatever that case may be, to get started. I'm going to use that money to buy materials for this other project that I'm doing. And then all of a sudden Scott backs out, and that project goes to hell. The next one goes to hell. And it's just a domino effect after that. And again, that guy didn't have any intention on taking anybody's money, breaching a contract or anything like that. That's just happenstance of how he built his business. And we get involved in a lot of those situations as well.
That's a really good example of someone that would maybe not have looked like a red flag, but a series of circumstances happened that led to something like that. So a question I have is, when people come to you for an asset search or to do due diligence like this, is it always a result of seeing a red flag that caused them to do it? Or sometimes is it, hey, I don't see anything, but I just want to look to be sure?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a mixture of both. There's usually something that makes them feel uneasy, and they just need either that stamp of approval that, hey, my gut was right, or I've watched too many crime shows, and I just had it in my head that something's going to go wrong, and there's nothing, because we've definitely found both.
Just obviously I have a bias because I've talked to you guys a lot and heard a lot of stories. In my brain, it makes sense. If there are 6-figure ramifications for a deal that you're about to sign, boy, does it make sense in my mind to call you guys and just have a peek.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you think about it, even if it's a $10,000 deal, I mean, wouldn't it be good to spend $1,000 to make sure that deal can go forward and then be even more lucrative than that? You get into the $1 million deals, the $10 million deals, and it's like, it's just stupid. It's stupid not to spend a very insignificant portion of your revenue to make that amount of money to be okay, or to know that you're going to be okay moving forward with this person.
And as business owners know that sometimes it's not just like the amount of money that you're risking, like losing calendar months or damaging your reputation is obviously in some cases more valuable than that money, the revenue associated with it.
100%.
Um, so I think the message here is pretty clear. It's just like an education issue is like if you're a business person and you're walking a path that you haven't walked before, or you're signing a new engagement or dedicating money or a portion of your life to somebody else, make the call. Um,
Yeah.
After the ink is dried, when it's too late to do due diligence and you are in the engagement, Joel, talk about some examples of corporate investigations where you're getting involved in an existing business structure.
Yeah, so we've been a part of several large corporations, that either partner started stealing, started siphoning funds away from the business, started cooking the books a little bit, and either the person knows about it but doesn't have proof, has a little bit of proof but needs more to actually take it to court. And so that's where we get involved and usually the first part of that is where's the baseline, where's his financial picture at. And so we end up doing a kind of a run through of his assets. We may look at a spouse if she may be involved, any other business partners, just to, even if there's no suspicion, if there's multiple partners, to get that off of out of everybody's mind that it's just this one person. And so, yeah, we start diving into things again. Do they owe money to people? Are they paying their bills? Are they making their house payment? Are they, behind on that? Getting into, do they have a large finance or a large cash account that nobody knew about? Do they have multiple bank accounts that the spouse doesn't know about? And then from there, we kind of take that baseline and we may move to field work, going and talking to family members, going and talking to their spouse. And it's like, hey, do you like, where do you guys bank at? And that's not a question you're going to get very often, but it's like, most people are a little standoffish and it's like, well, I'm not going to tell you that. Well, it's like, well, perfect. And you kind of can see where people hold or where they live out of. And it's like, well, do you know about this account or this account? Or do you know your husband has $50,000 in an account that you don't know about? And you kind of just start chipping away at those things until you put enough pressure on the person to either come forward or you have enough proof to actually move forward with criminal, civil charges, whatever the case may be.
So if there's suspicion of whether it's like someone with you in the C-suite or a partner or, ultimately a larger role in the business, and you sense foul play or red flags, you bring in an investigator. When you start finding bank accounts or complex holding structures, is that almost always indicative that there is foul play?
Yes and no. I mean, there are people who dabble in just a bunch of different stuff. I mean, we've mentioned it before. It's not the hardest thing to go make a corporation. I mean, most states, couple $100, you sign some paperwork and you have your corporation. But most people don't go through and incorporate, 20 or 30 businesses, let alone 60 or 70, if not more than that. And that's where we get into that mountain of like, okay, if you're wanting to chase this, Mr. Client, then I mean, it's going to be a big mountain and we have to go through it all. And that is a big red flag for us that we look for is, did this business come together and get closed within a year or two? Do they pay the first registration fee and then let it go defunct with the state because they didn't pay the next registration fee? All of those things are telling us, yeah, this is just a name and another step that they can kind of shelter themselves behind, that, somebody may be able to dig through 20 or 30 of those businesses, but they don't have the capital to go through and dig through all 60 of them. And that's what they're counting on. They want to bury their financial picture, their financial gain behind so much paperwork that people just don't have the funds to actually go chase it all down.
So, before we move on, Joel, for, people that might be watching that aren't, attorneys or business people that are accustomed to conversations like this, what does it mean really to have, these holding companies, these shell companies, the phrases that people are familiar with? Why is that such a red flag to have all of these companies opening and closing and registered? And
Yeah, most good business people are going to have a couple of companies. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket in case something happens. So you may have a front company, ABC company, and then you may have one or two other ones to run your payroll through to, one holds all of your vehicles and property, so you can just pay all your taxes in one place and have that stuff ran through that. But it's when you get into, John Smith LLC and then John Smith One LLC and John Smith without with a lowercase s instead of an uppercase. I mean, all of those things can make it difficult for people to dig through those companies and actually find what's going on. And a lot of what we find is like when business partners are actually funneling money out, if they have that John Smith LLC and somebody comes up, well, hey, I'm going to pay this large invoice. Who do I make the check out to? Is it John Smith LLC? That's like, well, no. That's just our name. Write it to John Smith One LLC. And then all of a sudden that large invoice is going into a different corporation under a different federal employee identification number. And now that money's gone, and the business partner for John Smith LLC has no idea because that money never actually ran through the business.
So my next question was, so what are they doing with all of these accounts? It sounds like they're often siphoning money off or hiding money or just looking, it's essentially to obfuscate or hide money.
Typically, yeah, and just making that paper trail longer and longer to where it makes it harder to actually track down the funds. So it may hit that, that second business account. They may pay another sub company, through a fake invoice, and that money goes to that different account. It may hit 2 or 3, 4 different accounts before he can go and take it and actually use it for himself. So it's all just about making that paper trail a little bit longer so people don't go looking or look a little bit. They may feel something's off, but they just don't or can't get to the end of it.
I'm certain there's an element of it depends with this question, but in terms of like you doing investigation work from like when you're doing, the computer work from the office, is these massive holding company structures, when you're having to tie those together, is that one of the biggest chunks of cost for you, the time it takes to look through all of those and tie them together?
Yeah, typically. And a lot of that's just not on the surface. You're digging through all of the records for the company, all of the Secretary of State documents, property records, vehicle records. It may all literally go back to just like where 1 or 2 things are registered to, and that's the only little bit that ties this person to this company. And sometimes we don't even get there. There's been times in those big corporate investigations, it's like, yeah, hey, here's this handful of companies that I know are his. These ones, I'm not sure. I know that he's tied to them, but I don't understand how the structure is, however he's tied to them. And those types of things are usually where we work hand in hand with the attorneys. It's like, yeah, they can grill them. They can set up their deposition with him to ask all these specific pertinent questions. And then they can tie those questions into these other companies of like, explain to me, and make him think that we know more than maybe we do. But, kind of opening up that door of like, okay, you need to explain these other 10 companies, what you're doing with them. And he may not even know that we know all of those companies. So putting those kind of 2 lists together is good. And you may not get to the end, but you can still, at least for us, you can still present that information to the attorney to help them through that case.
So you finding all of the things that you thought that the subject may have thought were hidden can do one of 2 things. You can provide those to the attorney as information for them to push further questioning, or you can present those directly to the subject, turn up the heat a little bit, and see if you can get an admission.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, a lot of what we do, may not even make it to court. We do write court ready documents and all of those things for those cases, but a lot of our stuff, may end at the deposition, giving the attorney the actual ammunition that they need to make their question so specific, get them, put into a corner to where they start lying to the court under oath. And that just gets them in hot water. And usually if you can catch somebody in that corner like that or in a lie, it kind of just opens up the door from there. The game's, almost up from that point for them.
So Joel, just to paint a picture, so these situations that you're describing, these can happen at any size company. These can be a local home builder where 2 partners are generally tradesmen that are working together on a series of smaller jobs all the way up to the Fortune 500.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that we've seen a handful of times is like, very successful businesses that kind of rely on their employees, to go out, like roofing companies or, construction companies, anything that you have to send your employee out to actually give an estimate or do something like that. We've seen those employees make a company the employer doesn't know about, and all of a sudden they show up to the inspection, to the estimation appointment, and they all of a sudden start giving them invoices for that other company. And they go back to their boss, and it's like, oh yeah, that didn't work out, and then go do that job on the weekend and get paid for all of that. So you're using your employer's advertising money, all of their big funds behind them that they're using to get this person to come to the business, and then you're taking all the funds by shoving them into your sub company that may be similarly named to your owner's company.
I didn't realize what was going on. I had a friend told me they had a company have a worker come up and say, I'll just do the work on the weekend and you can just pay me.
Yeah,
That's a small version of that.
100%. Yeah, we work on a lot of those, taking clients from your employer, all of that stuff. I mean, most of the time when you're that type of employee, you have that written in your contract that you can't do that. You can't perform this type of work for our clients for a cheaper rate or what have you. You can't specifically go out and target the people that we've already spent the money targeting.
No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. You just never really think of like that as a small version of a fraud type that gets much, much bigger.
Yeah.
So, Joel, obviously, we're hitting on kind of like before you get into business, when you're in business, um, when the big blow up happens, and then there's a partner dispute or a lawsuit, or there is an exit where there's a big payday, and someone is hiding resources. How do you get involved in the post dispute investigations?
Yeah, so that's where that baseline really comes into play. So you just start with the asset investigation. You get their baseline. If it's a company, you get the company's baseline. Like where are the funds at? We need to make sure that he didn't open anything up in the business name that you don't know about. So we even investigate the company of our client just to make sure, like, hey, here's the stuff that we found. Do you know about everything here? If yes, perfect. Then the business is safe. If no, then we obviously go a little bit deeper from there. But then once the asset stuff is kind of done, or the asset investigation is done, that's when we kind of move to field work and going to conduct interviews, seeing if their financial picture just doesn't make sense, if they appear that they're living above their means. That's when you can go start pulling in those family, friends, family in general, kind of go talk to whoever they may interact with, people that if they go to church, people that they go to church with. And that's where you hit on it earlier of like your reputation. It's like if this person's kind of a big pillar in the community and you go start talking to everybody that they interact with, and it's like, hey, this guy's involved in stealing money. Did he give you anything? Did he give the church a big gift that you guys didn't expect or anything like that? And you start kind of poking holes or asking people like, hey, you may not be involved, but if he's kind of giving you anything, we need to know that. And your involvement may stop here with us. But if you don't give us anything, you don't talk to us, you may get pulled into the big lawsuit later. So do yourself a favor. And it's like, he's not going to or sell himself out to save you. It's going to be the other way around.
That's one of the situations that impresses me so much about what you guys are able to do with your pool of resources is you can assemble this invaluable set of information, from the computer and the desk, and then you can go out into the field and use that information to start asking questions and filling in the gaps and maybe sometimes ending the case before it goes to court.
Yeah, a lot of our clients, that's kind of the conversation that we have at the beginning of the investigation part is like, where do you want this to go? Because there's some people who are just so pissed off. It's like, I want that person in jail. I want them to go to jail for fraud. I want all of this stuff. And it's like, okay, we can go that route, and that's definitely something that's viable. Going that route may not get your money back. So which is it? Is it going to be persecuting the person who did this, or trying to get funds and everything monetarily back for you? Sometimes they go hand in hand. Sometimes they don't. If you are that gung-ho about putting somebody behind bars, they're just going to clam up and they'll take the sentence, you're never going to get your money. But if it's like, hey, we're going to go this way, if you pay me back, you get us our funds back or whatever, we're not going to go after you criminally, and so you don't have to worry about that. And that kind of gets people to come back to the table on, I need to repay this stuff.
That you hit on it in every time. You and the other investigators we speak with hit on it every time, is in your early questioning, managing the emotion around truly understanding what a person wants to get out of this. Like, are you looking for financial restitution, revenge? Like, what are you wanting the end result to be is so important, because it changes
100%.
the course of what you do.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. All of that matters.
Joel, obviously the type of work you do, confidentiality is such a huge part of it. So we're not able to kind of show the companies that you do work for or talk about the people. Can you just sort of give a range of, is there a too small or too big in terms of a company or a corporation that it should approach PHENIX?
No, absolutely not. I mean, a lot of what we do is based on the client. Like, what is worth to you? Is answering these questions worth it to you? And sometimes, and I think I mentioned it in a previous one, I've had multi-million dollar fraud cases or judgment cases, and they're like, we're not willing to spend $1,500 to look into this person, we need it cheaper. And it's like, no, like, it just
Yeah.
can't be done. I'm not going to answer your questions of what the depth of your questions for anything less than that. And this is only going to be a starting point either. I've also had cases, I've had a judgment case that the person, I think, was owed $8,500 and she spent $6,500 with me. And it's just that emotion behind it. And it's like, I
Mhm.
don't give it, I don't care if it's 10 grand and I lose 2 grand on this deal. I want to stick it to this person.
That's the funniest, like, B2B customer, and they exist in every industry, where I think most people in business, especially attorneys and executives, know, having an experienced, intelligent, competent person do work for you is costly. And if you don't want to spend money, there's always an incompetent person or a
100%.
novice that can do it for cheap. There's
100%. And
never.
we direct people to do that too. I mean, our fees aren't cheap. We are at, close, if not at the top of our industry. And when budget is a concern, I mean, we try to work with as many people as we can with within their budget. And if it's just not there, we tell people, like, go out, go out and do your due diligence, get everything that you can. And it's still going to cost you some money, but when you don't get the answers, and I know you're not going to, then you're going to have to come back to me and spend the same amount of money anyway. But we encourage people to do that, because if you're good at your job, I mean, that the next 20 companies aren't going to do what you do as good as you do it. And so, yeah, go use them. It's going to be a waste of money. They may get me a little bit further quicker than I would have gotten there, but go do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of like, the reality is, as a service provider, you have a couple of choices, and PHENIX went the route of, you build your team around experienced experts built to solve the most complicated cases. And if you have a copy and paste case where you don't want to spend money, it might not be the right person, but you have to build your team on being able to solve the most complex cases if you want to be the premium option.
100%.
Joel, you've hit on a lot today. I guess I like to wrap with similar type of question I always do. You've done a lot of these. What is the most surprising thing that you've seen doing asset search around corporations that would have blown 20-year-old Joel's mind?
That people don't know how to communicate. Again, if you get somebody who can talk the talk, you never asked enough questions ever. And it's just that communication part. It's like, when you think you've asked enough stuff, go talk to somebody else. What should I ask? And they're always going to give you another question that you should have asked.
It's so, probe more, ask more questions, stop getting bowled over by confident salespeople.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you see any avoidance, poke further.
You know what's interesting? We talk about sometimes at the office, you see these like historical stories or even biblical concepts of this like sorcerer that could hypnotize and influence people. I just wonder if those are stories of con men from like 1,000 years ago.
Probably. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, anything like that in any kind of myth or legend or whatever. I mean, a lot of that is based in historical fact. So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Yeah, it was like a guy that had a hypnotist amulet. It was like, no, it was just a very convincing salesperson. Um, Joel, this was an awesome episode. Love having you on. Get a lot out of your experience. Excited for the next round, but appreciate your time today.
Perfect. Thank you.